So you have to hold off your questions if you don't mind. And I'll kick off today with the first speaker. So our first speaker today is Allan Ryan. Allan is the CEO of the Hargreaves Institute for Innovation. Allan is one of Australia's leading authorities on innovation and leadership, and has a long career in leading organisational change. Now, Allan will speak about the innovation process and the importance of leadership. So, welcome, Allan.
Thank you, Zoo. Firstly, I'd like to recognise that the Department of Environment and Primary Industry is a member of the Hargreaves Institute, and it's been a member for over 5 years, and I thank them. Also, I'd like to thank the Food Innovation Australia Limited. They're also a member of the Hargreaves Institute, so we've done a lot of work around the food sector. And I'm going to speak to you today from my experience in food and produce, primarily working with Produce Marketing Australia, PMA, and doing some work in New Zealand. I'm not a fruit expert, I'm not a produce expert, so I'm going to talk generally about innovation and how industries change for success. That's my plan for the presentation today. So when you think about things and you see people either in the newspaper or on TV that are incredibly successful, or even in the street of the town where you see someone who's far more successful than you are, you always consider, why are they successful? What's the secret that they have that can help me? My job at Hargreaves is to find out those secrets by interviewing those people and then sharing those secrets widely to help everybody improve. And the immediate thing people say to me, and so why would someone who's successful share their secrets with you? And the answer is very simple. I then can share 50 other successful people's secrets with them. So if you give me one, I'll give you 50 back. And that's how Hargreaves operates. So I want to share 2 secrets with you today and then talk about innovation. The first secret to successful businesses, and we've now researched over 100 of them, is they just have to be in the right place at the right time. It's more to do with timing than you think. When you think of Steve Jobs at Apple and launching an iPhone, was it the fact that he launched the iPhone, or was it the fact that the phones went, and everyone was buying phones at that particular time? Or Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook, was it the fact that he did Facebook, or was everyone getting on the internet? Right now is the absolutely perfect time for fresh produce to become the biggest growing industry in Australia. When you look at what's happening in Asia and the growth of the middle classes, you have got an untapped potential, and the work we're doing in the cherry industry essentially means flying 747s of cherries across to China for Christmas. They can literally sell 1, 2, 3, 4 times as much as they can grow at the price they ask, because we're the only people that can grow cherries and deliver them fresh to China. And now the middle classes in China have the money to buy them. It's not a commodity product anymore. And so, Peter, can you go click? And that's about Food Innovation Australia. Next one, thanks. This shows you, this graph here shows you the rise of the middle class in Asia and in China and India. There are hundreds of millions of people in China and India that are far wealthier than anybody in this room. And they don't want to eat food that is manufactured in China and India anymore. They want to eat fresh food with provenance from somewhere that's different. There's somewhere that they know is safe. And so the most successful country at doing this is New Zealand. And so I was in New Zealand a couple of months ago at the Produce Marketing Association conference, and here's a little story about why New Zealand is kicking our ass in produce sales. In New Zealand, they grow 10 times more food than they eat. 9 times that food gets exported. We barely export more than we eat in Australia, yet we could export 10 times more. So I'm in New Zealand, I do my presentation in front of 500 Kiwi produce farmers, etc. They then invite us out to dinner to Eden Park. And Eden Park is the big rugby field, okay? And this is fantastic. Again, there's 500 people having dinner. And the menu thing says they're going to present the Bledisloe Cup. And the Bledisloe Cup is the cup that Australia and the Kiwis fight over in rugby. I know this is probably not a rugby town, but go with the flow. And it is the seriously most important thing you can fight over. I say, hang on a minute, I'm around a bunch of fruit growers and they're going to do the Bledisloe Cup. And the Bledisloe Cup was presented by Lord Bledisloe, who was the Governor of New Zealand 100 years ago. And I asked the guy on my table, and I said, tell me about the Bledisloe Cup at the fruit. Lord Bledisloe made 2 cups, one for rugby and one for fruit growers. And there is a ginormous silver cup for rugby and a smaller silver cup for fruit growers, for the best fruit delivered to England in the 1900s from New Zealand. And they give out the Bledisloe Cup every year to the best fruit grower in New Zealand. But over the journey, they changed that to the person in New Zealand that's done most for industry. So, sitting there having dinner, then the presentation came up, and if you go to the next slide, this is the Bledisloe Cup for rugby, right? If you go to the next one, this is the Bledisloe Cup for fruit growers. And it gets given to the person that's done the biggest thing for the New Zealand fruit industry over years, etc., etc. I saw 500 competitive fruit growers having dinner at Eden Park, all picking at each other, all having a go at each other, etc., suddenly become one team where they are all working for the success of New Zealand to export fruit everywhere, driven by the fact of excellence. The first rule about being a successful organisation is you just got to be there at the right time. The second rule is you can't do it by yourself. If you don't do it as a community, you're going to get whooped, because they are. You heard we just had a free trade agreement, Tony signed it up with China, etc. They had a free trade agreement years before us that's better than ours. When they go and present, and we're in a food conferencing thing in Hong Kong somewhere, as you can tell I'm very specifically know a lot about food. There's a food exhibition, and there is the Victoria stand, and there is the New South Wales stand, and there is the New Zealand stand. And we've got Victoria, New South Wales, and South Australia, fighting over who's better, what's better, whatever, etc., etc., and we're up against the whole of New Zealand. You will not be successful unless you work as a community in the world market. Forget the local market, because the world market's 10 times bigger than the local market. Unless you work as a community, forget it. So, if we move on to an actual presentation, I just want to share that with you to go. So what does success look like? Peter's got the clicker, so it makes it quite interesting to do this. This is the famous saying, and I think everyone would have heard this saying, you know, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Has everyone heard that one? Albert said that 70 years ago. What I say today is this one. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same results. And the reason why I say that is because the world is changing so fast that if you guys try to succeed by doing what you did yesterday, tomorrow, you will fail. If you think about what you were doing as a business 20 years ago compared to what you imagine you're going to have to do 20 years in the future, it is going to be completely different. Now, I'm an old guy. When I started my career, we didn't have a computer, we didn't have a fax machine, we didn't have a phone. We didn't have the internet. Does anyone feel the same way? If you then think of what's going to happen in the next 20 years, we will still have, and I've seen them, these robotic things going around picking apples that check every apple with cameras to make sure the apple's absolutely perfect. So when you pick it, and if the apple's not perfect, you leave it on the tree, then pick it tomorrow. That sort of technology exists today that never existed 20 years ago. Can you imagine what we're going to be doing in 20 years' time? If you do what you do today, it's not going to be successful tomorrow. So when I started my career, this is the classic Kodak story, I sat in a seminar like this and was told that I had to be like Kodak because they had the best quality, etc. So please, you can listen to what I share with you today, but don't repeat it for the next 20 years, only repeat it for the next 20 minutes or so, because even what I say today will be out of date in a year or two's time. And so one of the key things that people just don't recognise, thanks Pete, is that 70% of Australia's top 100 companies since 1990 are no longer in Australia's top 100 companies. I know that Shepparton has gone through a huge change, and I know there are lots of issues with SPC, and I actually have done some work for SPC, and I'm very good friends with Coca-Cola, and we've worked with Coca-Cola, and I understand all the issues behind that. That's just normal business. In the last 20 years, 70% of our biggest companies have felt the same pain that you guys have felt. It's just what happens in business and change. Peter? This company was bankrupt and became the biggest company in the world in the last 20 years. The next company, has anyone heard of ResMed? They do the sleep mask things. My university lecturer, Peter Farrell, who taught me chemical engineering, I'm an engineer, chemical engineering, decided he didn't want to be a lecturer anymore, went and got a job in industry, saw an opportunity, borrowed $1 million from a mate, as you do, bought the intellectual property, and now he's a billionaire. And every single item is made in Western Sydney. You can do it. It can be done. It does take vision and leadership, etc. to do. Pete? And I'll hopefully share some stories with this company where we've done a lot of work with these guys. Thanks. So what does successful innovation look like? Peter made the point that he wants to make you more successful, and innovation is the most important thing, and this is the secret. I've studied innovation now for nearly 2 decades, and I've summarised it down into 3 slides. So, this is the power of computing from 1900 to 2100, from a really, really small number on this side to a really, really big number up there. Have people heard of a thing called Moore's Law? The power of computers double every 18 months, or the price halves every 18 months. It was invented by Gordon Moore in 1963, who was the managing director of Intel. He noticed it, said, geez, look at that, that's cute, and he called it, and it was named after him. It's been correct since 1963. And so when we go to the next one, you can see all the different computers over the 100 years, from a really, really small number to a really, really big number, and you can see all the different types of computers starting off with the Apple II, etc., etc. How do they do it? And this is the secret. The secret is, when they invent a new computer chip, they put it inside the computer that invents the next computer chip, that goes inside the computer that invents the next computer chip. The way you get exponential growth is by doing lots of little things right with a common vision. That's the secret to innovation success. Not doing big radical stuff and changing and risking everything. It's doing lots and lots of little things together right with one common goal. That's how you become successful. And so, Pete, if you look here, exponential growth comes from lots of small things, not big things. Thank you. Here's the share price of Apple. That's the US dollars. There's 1993 when they were bankrupt, through to 2011 or so when they were the most wealthy, biggest company in the world. That's called exponential growth. Simple rule, you can write this one down. Wear the same shirt and jeans for 20 years and you'll be successful. What that guy did, and yes, he was smart, and yes, he was at the right time, common vision, and he worried about every little thing and got every little thing right for 20 years in a row. And yes, it took him a while to get his act together, but away he went. Can we have the next one? This is ResMed, Peter Farrell, 100% Australian, same story. Next one. This is the difference between iTunes and Amazon. Can you see that iTunes went exponential and Amazon didn't? Amazon has never made a profit in its whole life, right? iTunes is lots and lots of little things over and over and over. Next one. Samsung's different, and Samsung is where you guys have to follow. Thanks. The share price of Samsung is in red. See how it's pretty poor at the top there? I use share prices because it really tells you what a company's worth. If you know any, share price is it. And there's Apple. In October 2012, can you see that Samsung started growing while Apple started dropping? And so if you sold your Apple shares then, you'd be 49% better off. And we all know how it happened. They copied Apple. And remember when they got caught with the patent thing and had to pay Apple $250 million? The value of their company went up $2.5 billion because everybody knew that a Samsung was as good as an Apple because Samsung copied Apple. It was the best thing that ever happened to them. My second recommendation for innovation is, number one, do lots and lots of little things. Number two, whatever you do, copy people that are doing it better than you. Share, copy, help each other. Don't invent anything, it's too hard. Leave it to the smart scientists. That's what Samsung did. Thanks on, Pete. You can see here, look at the profitability of Samsung just going up and up and up. And yes, Apple is seriously better and Apple has seriously better things, but if you can't be Apple, I prefer to be Samsung. Next. And here's the share of the smartphone market. Anyone here ever have a Nokia phone? Hands up. Put him up, if you keep him up, if you've still got it. Yes. I apologise for you. It's in the bottom drawer. Are you using your Nokia phone?
Yes.
You're one of the whole group. Hands up if you've got a Samsung phone. Keep them up if you had an Apple phone and then you moved to a Samsung. Only one?
No, two.
Two? That's the reason why Apple's not as big and Samsung's growing. It's called churn, right? But here, have a look what happened to Nokia and have a look what happened to Samsung. And Apple is just cruising along in the middle. Samsung is inventive and they make darn sure they copy everyone else that's smarter than them as well. They do both, and that's a big secret. Thanks, Pete. So, this, I know it's a famous Australian song and it's a country song and it's the formula for innovation. And when I say that to people, they go, yeah, but it's hard still. Yes, it is. But I prefer you to do something small and miss something small than miss something big. Don't bet the farm on innovation. I just got the 5-minute thing, so I'll stop quickly. So, how do you do it? We'll run through these quickly because I gave you too many slides. You can get a copy of the slides from Peter afterwards. Thank you. There's 4 sectors to success for innovation, thanks. There's innovation 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 and innovation 0. Innovation 1.0, just keep on clicking through, people, is brainstorming, right? Invented in 1953. Has anyone heard about brainstorming? I hate to tell you this, it just works. You get a bunch of smart people in a room to solve a problem, it just works, you have to do it. Next one. And again. This guy is Innovation 2.0 in about 1980, 1990. And he tells a lovely story, and if you want to do some homework, it's called Steve Jobs' The Lost Interview. Type that into YouTube and just watch it for 5 minutes. It shows an interview of him in about 1989 when he had long hair and a suit, and he tells this story. He was reading a magazine as a teenager, and in this sciencey Nature magazine, it listed all the species on the planet, and it listed how efficient they were and how much food they ate to how far they went. True? That was it. He read it, it was cool, and had a league table, the most efficient and the least efficient. The most efficient species on the planet is this thing, which is the South American condor. And us humans are 3/4 of the way down the bottom, we're pretty hopeless. Okay? And everyone understands that. Except when a human being gets on a bicycle, we are the most efficient species on the planet. Now, I ride bicycles, and there was a photo there before. I was half of the, that was a drawing of me, half of the Einstein one. And I'm a pretty lousy cyclist. Any cyclists here? Tell the truth. No Lycra-loving cyclists? With Lycra? Oh. No, with Lycra? Do you know why cyclists wear Lycra? Because we can't see ourselves. Do you know why cyclists wear Lycra? To make darn sure you guys do see us. I'm a hopeless cyclist, so I buy more expensive bikes, but that's a different thing. I'm a hopeless cyclist, but I can ride further and faster than anybody in this room can run. True? What makes the difference is that I've got a tool, a method, a process, and you don't. If you want to be a better leader and more successful, just don't work harder. Use tools, techniques, go to the training, learn for the leadership, which we're going to hear about in a second. That is what you have to do, not just work harder. There's lots of smart things, thank you, Pete. Lots of tools out there, keep going, thanks. Lots of books out there, keep going, thanks. 3.0 is my theory, and I'll share it with you in a second. But the next one, Innovation 0.0, is what you guys really have to grab. And it was written in 1918 by Charles Bean, who's the guy sitting in the centre of the front there. He was a war reporter in World War I. And in 1918 he wrote this: Australians did what they did in this war not by refusing to learn from other countries, but by going out and picking up the very best that other countries could give them. Now, I deeply respect that a lot of Australians went overseas during World War I and a lot less came back. And we should never forget that, especially next year, it's the 100th anniversary. However, a lot came back and they built this country. They learnt from other countries, they learnt leadership, they learnt mateship, they learnt going over the top. And if you guys want to be successful in your community, you've got to think like they thought. Because it's a battle. And if you don't win, someone else will win selling their fruit to China as compared to your fruit to China. It's a battle. And that's the key driver. Innovation 0.0 is leadership. And my last slide, and I'll get out here, is that I compared these two companies. I'm a nerd, I research all this sort of stuff. Thank you, Pete. That's their share price, and again, you can see what Apple did and you can see what Microsoft did. This is the amount of money they spent on research and development over the last 10 years, from 2000 to 2009. Look where Apple is, and look where Microsoft is. If you are innovative, you don't need the money. Everyone says to me, I want to be innovative, but I haven't got any money. I want to change, but I can't afford it. The most innovative things occur when you haven't got the resources to do it. That's what Apple did. And that's the driving force. You don't have to have bucket loads of money. Now, I work with major corporations like Westpac and Coca-Cola and AMP, and they do have bucket loads of money, except they have to pay their shareholders, so they never invest as much money in innovation. If you want to be innovative, you don't need resources. Yes, you need some, but it's not a money game. It's a people game. It makes you successful in innovation. That's my last slide. Have I done my 20 minutes, Pete? Can I get off? Yes. We'll answer questions later. Thank you.